You ever see a politician go completely silent on live TV? Kash Patel dropped one line, and AOC and Crockett froze. No spin, no comebacks, just shock. This wasn't a debate. It was a public reckoning, and it went viral in seconds. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It was supposed to be a standard discussion, another roundtable segment about government transparency, oversight, and the increasing concern over the weaponization of federal agencies. But no one, not the viewers, not the host, and certainly not Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Representative Jasmine Crockett, expected what would unfold next. The network had invited Kash Patel, former Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense, under President Trump and a former federal prosecutor, as a guest analyst. Known for his sharp takes, inside knowledge of federal agencies, and no-holds-barred approach to truth, Patel was there to offer expert insight. But what he delivered instead was an explosive political moment that would send shockwaves through Washington and social media alike. As the panel discussion warmed up, the host pivoted to Patel and asked about the apparent double standard in how different political figures are treated by federal agencies. The expectation was a few sound bites, some policy critique, maybe a jab at the Biden administration. Instead, Patel leaned forward, voice calm but razor-sharp, and dropped a truth bomb. "The American people deserve to know," he began, "that figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Representative Jasmine Crockett have directly benefited from the very federal agencies they now claim are corrupt when it's politically convenient." He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. His delivery was confident, measured, and lethal. "They've stayed silent," he continued, "while political opponents were being investigated, surveilled, and silenced, not because they were unaware, but because it served their agenda." And then, the moment that truly lit the fuse. He turned directly to the camera, his gaze locked in. "You want the truth? These folks didn't just know it was happening. They encouraged it. There it was, live, raw, and uncensored. It was more than a bold statement. It was a direct accusation, one that framed two sitting members of Congress, not as concerned watchdogs of democracy, but as opportunistic players complicit in weaponizing the very systems they now criticize. The studio went quiet for a second, one of those rare, unscripted silences that says more than words ever could. The look on their faces said it all. AOC had joined the discussion remotely, beaming in from her office. Up until Patel's statement, she was smiling, occasionally nodding or rolling her eyes when someone made a point she disagreed with. But as Patel laid down his charge, the smile faded. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly. Her mouth tightened. In real time, the camera caught her reaction, one of visible discomfort. She tried to compose herself, but viewers could see it. She was rattled. Representative Jasmine Crockett, seated in studio just a few feet from Patel, shifted in her chair. The ever-confident Texan firebrand, known for her fast and feisty comebacks, suddenly looked unsure. Her arms crossed. Her eyes darted to the host as if silently asking, "Are we going to let him say that?" It was TV gold, the kind of unscripted, high-stakes drama that makes headlines and fuels political commentary for days. Why it hit so hard, and why they couldn't just shake it off, Patel's words hit like a freight train, not just because of what he said, but because of when and how he said it. For months, Republicans and even some independents have voiced concerns over what they call a two-tiered justice system. From the FBI's treatment of conservative figures to the IRS's handling of non-profit audits, many believe certain federal agencies are being used to suppress opposition voices. Patel flipped the narrative, turning the lens on AOC and Crockett, who often champion themselves as fighters against injustice and systemic abuse. His claim? That they're only against corruption when they're not benefiting from it. He didn't mince words. He accused them of willful complicity. suggesting that they stood by silently when their political enemies were targeted, using their influence not to protect justice, but to push their own ideological victories. In doing so, Patel framed the two progressives not as fearless advocates, but as political opportunists cloaked in virtue. And that struck a nerve. The broader context, selective outrage in Washington? Let's dig a little deeper. When the Twitter files dropped, exposing potential government pressure on social media platforms to suppress certain narratives, many expected bipartisan outrage. But progressive figures like AOC and Crockett largely brushed off the revelations. When whistleblowers came forward from inside the FBI and DOJ, revealing concerns about internal bias and political targeting, again, silence from some corners of the aisle. To critics like Patel, this selective outrage is the real scandal. Not just that these abuses might be happening, but that those who claim to fight for justice are choosing when to care about it. His live statement pulled the curtain back, suggesting that what Americans are seeing isn't public service, but political performance. The aftermath. A moment that echoed far beyond the studio. The clip was clipped, tweeted, memed, and reposted across social media platforms. Viewers didn't just watch it, they felt it. Kash just nuked them live on TV, one user posted. Watch AOC freeze. You can't fake that, another added. Even some moderate voices acknowledged the power of the moment, saying, you don't have to agree with Kash to see that they weren't ready for that level of honesty. As for AOC and Crockett, no official response has been made, but both appeared notably absent from cable appearances the next day. Patel, on the other hand, appeared on another show the following evening, smiling calmly. I'm just saying what people already know, he said. And the truth doesn't need a script. What happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. And it certainly wasn't comfortable for anyone on that stage, except maybe Kash Patel, the moment after Patel dropped his bombshell, accusing reps Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jasmine Crockett of not just knowing about, but encouraging, the political weaponization of federal agencies. Time seemed to stop for just a second, and in that silence, everything changed. This wasn't your average back-and-forth TV segment. This was live confrontation, and it hit harder than anyone expected. AOC's body language, a reaction you couldn't misrep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had joined the segment via satellite. Moments before Patel spoke, she had appeared confident, smiling lightly, nodding as others made their points, occasionally jotting down notes. Her presence, as always, commanded attention. But as soon as Patel turned to the camera and delivered that final sentence, "You want truth?" These folks didn't just know it was happening, they encouraged it. Something changed in her demeanor. Her smile dropped almost instantly. She blinked, not just once, but rapidly, a telltale sign of being thrown off balance. Her head tilted, slightly confused. Then she attempted what seemed to be a laugh, a quick chuckle probably meant to deflect or mock the comment. But it didn't land. In fact, the microphone caught the faintest crack in her voice, a falter that didn't go unnoticed by viewers or commentators. And then, silence. No clever retort, no sharp comeback. Just AOC for once, looking stunned. For a politician known for her quick wit and relentless energy in debate, this moment was a rare show of vulnerability, a human moment. But also a deeply political one, because that stunned silence, that visible discomfort, told a story all on its own. Crockett's shift. From firebrand to frozen. Meanwhile, Representative Jasmine Crockett was sitting in the studio, just feet away from Patel. She had come in confident, ready to push back on conservative talking points, and up until that moment, she had done exactly that. But when Patel dropped his accusation, live and with pinpoint precision, Crockett's entire posture shifted. She sat back in her chair. Her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her eyes darted, not at Patel, but toward the host, almost as if she was searching for someone to cut to commercial, to change the topic, to save her. Then she spoke. "This is just more MAGA conspiracy." "Garbage," she said. The words came out flat. They lacked her usual passion, her signature bite. There was no spark, no fury. Just a defensive phrase that sounded like it came from a pre-written playbook, one she never thought she'd have to use so soon. It was obvious to viewers, commentators, and even the other panelists. Crockett wasn't just disagreeing. She was caught off guard, and the firebrand had gone cold. The eyes tell the story. A public calling out TV is a visual medium. People don't just hear your words, they watch your face, your hands, your eyes. And in this case, the reactions said more than any argument ever could. When Kash Patel made his accusation, there was no shouting, no table thumping, just a hard truth delivered like a sledgehammer. And that calmness, that clarity, it made it even more powerful. Both AOC and Crockett had come prepared to spar with Republicans. They were ready for usual narratives. GOP, corruption, election denialism, misinformation. But they weren't ready to be called out by someone who had insider experience, who had receipts, and who was not afraid to throw the spotlight directly onto them. This wasn't politics. As usual, this was a moment of reckoning. Silence speaks volumes, and viewers noticed. What made this exchange so powerful, and why it quickly went viral, wasn't just what Kash Patel said. It was how little was said after. Neither AOC nor Crockett mounted a substantial rebuttal. They didn't deny the claim outright. They didn't pivot to evidence or challenge Patel's record. They simply froze. In live television, that kind of reaction is gold, because it's real. You can't rehearse it. You can't re-edit it. It's raw, and it tells the audience one of two things. You weren't expecting the truth, or worse. You were hoping it wouldn't come up. And when millions of people are watching, those unspoken moments can define a narrative more than 1,000 press releases. Aftermath in real time. Internet eruption. Almost instantly, the clip was everywhere. TikTok edits, YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, all showing that exact moment when AOC looked stunned and Crockett shifted in her seat. She didn't know what to say. "That says everything," one commenter posted. "Watch Crockett's eyes. She knew that was real," another added. Even some progressive voices commented. That was a tough moment to watch. They weren't ready. The silence wasn't just awkward. It was damning, and the reaction across the political spectrum proved that viewers sensed something bigger had happened. The verdict? More than just a viral clip-in. The end? This wasn't just a sharp moment in a televised debate. It was a public moment of exposure, where political figures who often lead the charge suddenly found themselves on the defensive, without a lifeline. Kash Patel didn't just confront them with rhetoric. He hit them with a challenge, one they weren't ready to answer. And for the audience watching at home, it was more than TV. It was truth in real time. It wasn't just what Kash Patel said. It was how deeply it echoed with millions of Americans watching from home. In one unscripted, fiery moment on live TV, Patel didn't just confront Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Representative Jasmine Crockett. He held up a mirror, not just to them, but to the political double standards many Americans feel have taken over Washington. The clip didn't just trend, it erupted. Within hours, it had been clipped, posted, and shared across every major platform. Twitter, now X, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram. And the reaction? Overwhelming. People weren't just reacting to the drama. They were reacting to the truth they felt had been ignored for too long. Why did this moment go nuclear online? Because Kash Patel said what many Americans have been thinking for months, if not years. Rising distrust in institutions. Let's be honest, trust in institutions has been falling for years. Government agencies like the DOJ, FBI, and IRS are under more public scrutiny than ever before. From investigations that seem politically motivated to whistleblowers revealing internal bias. The sense that our institutions are being manipulated is no longer a fringe theory. It's becoming mainstream concern. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. People see the cracks. Kash Patel tapped directly into that fear when he said, "These folks didn't just know it was happening, they encouraged it." That line didn't just hit AOC and Crockett. It hit every American who's felt like the system has two sets of rules, one for elites and one for everyone else. The hypocrisy hit. Hard Patel's accusation wasn't about partisanship, it was about selective outrage, and that's exactly what made it resonate. Over the past year, AOC and Representative Crockett have become two of the loudest voices when it comes to calling out supposed corruption, inequality, and attacks on democracy. They've stood at microphones and called for investigations, hearings, and resignations when the narrative suits them. But where were they when FBI whistleblowers stepped forward, revealing political bias and internal retaliation? Where were they when the Twitter files revealed a disturbing pattern of government pressure on social media companies to suppress certain viewpoints? Why did they not just stay silent, but in some cases, defend the very agencies under scrutiny? For a growing number of Americans, that silence was deafening. Patel called it out in a way that was bold, unapologetic, and completely unfiltered. He took their own message, hold the powerful accountable, and threw it right back at them. And for millions watching at home, it was like finally seeing someone say out loud what they've felt for a long time. This wasn't left versus right. It was truth versus politics. One of the most striking parts of Patel's moment is that it wasn't delivered as a partisan rant. There was no screaming, no wild conspiracy, just a calm, cutting truth. He didn't name-drop Trump. He didn't even focus on Democrats as a whole. He focused on individual accountability and aimed it at two politicians who have built careers on holding others to that standard, and in doing so, he flipped the script. This wasn't just another Republican attacking Democrats.
It was a former federal prosecutor, a man who's worked deep inside the system, calling out hypocrisy on live TV. And whether you agree with Patel or not, you couldn't deny the power of the moment. He challenged the idea that speaking truth
to power only matters when it's politically convenient. That idea, that justice should be blind, not biased, is something that crosses party lines. And that's why the clip didn't just resonate with conservatives. It got traction with independents, moderates, even disillusioned liberals who are tired of double standards and political theater. When silence says everything, what really made the moment explode wasn't just Patel's words. It was the reaction from AOC and Crockett. Both are known for their fiery rhetoric, their social media savvy, and their refusal to back down. But in that moment, they froze. Crockett gave a canned line, MAGA conspiracy garbage, but with none of her usual energy. AOC looked visibly shaken. She tried to brush it off with a laugh, but it fell flat. Her voice cracked. She didn't follow up with her usual quick-talking rebuttal. She just paused. That reaction, that silence, said more than any words could. People watching could feel it. This wasn't just a political hit. It landed. And in politics, when your opponents say nothing, it's often because they have nothing to say. A cultural shift, not just a viral clip. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a cultural checkpoint, a reminder that the American public is waking up to the games being played in Washington. The rise of independent journalism, whistleblowers, and social media has made it harder than ever for public officials to hide behind curated talking points. And when someone like Patel steps up and challenges them directly, without flinching, people pay attention. And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't the production. It wasn't the platform. It wasn't even the headline. It was the fact that someone stood on live TV and said, "You can't have it both ways. You don't get to cry about injustice only when it hurts your side." And for millions of Americans, across political lines, that message was long overdue. So, what happens now? After one of the most jaw-dropping live TV moments in recent Political memory. Kash Patel isn't backing down, and neither is the storm he unleashed. If anything, the heat is rising, the pressure is mounting, and the stakes. They just got a whole lot bigger. Let's break it all down. Kash Patel. I'll testify under oath. While many public figures walk back controversial remarks or try to clarify after they go viral, Kash Patel went the opposite direction. He doubled down. In follow-up interviews and posts across his official channels, Patel made one thing crystal clear. I'm not afraid to speak the truth. Not on camera, not in Congress, and certainly not under oath. Yes, you heard that right. Kash Patel is offering to testify before Congress about what he says is clear and undeniable, a pattern of political bias, weaponized justice, and selective outrage by some of the very lawmakers who claim to be champions of transparency and fairness. Patel says he has documents, communications, and inside knowledge, and he's daring Congress to bring him in. Whether they do or not remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. This isn't just a viral moment anymore. It's a political wildfire. Behind the scenes, AOC and Crockett scramble for damage control. While Kash was out in front of cameras again, AOC and Reppers Jasmine Crockett went quiet. At first, their silence spoke volumes. No tweets, no press releases, no rebuttals. But now, insider reports suggest the silence wasn't calm. It was chaos. Sources close to both congresswomen have leaked that their teams were completely blindsided by the confrontation. They didn't expect Patel to name them directly, and they certainly weren't prepared for how fast and hard the internet reacted. According to a senior staffer, it was supposed to be a routine segment. They had talking points prepared about democracy, justice, and inequality. What they got instead was a direct accusation and no warning. Now, damage control mode is in full swing. Insiders say both teams are meeting with PR consultants, media advisors, and party strategists to figure out how to respond without making things worse. Because here's the risk. If they push back too hard, they amplify the story. If they stay silent, it looks like they're conceding. A political catch-22. And let's be honest, in the court of public opinion, perception is everything. The fallout isn't over. As the dust settles, the ripple effects are just beginning. Already, a handful of conservative lawmakers have called for hearings into the claims Patel raised. If even one committee decides to bring him in, under oath, it could trigger a firestorm of media coverage and investigations. Expect to hear words like subpoena, whistleblower, selective prosecution, political bias in federal. Agencies sound familiar, because this is the same kind of language used during past scandals, except now the target isn't the usual suspects. It's two of the Democratic Party's most vocal, visible representatives, AOC and Jasmine Crockett. This puts them in a very different position. They're not just the ones calling out injustice. They're now being accused of ignoring it when it served their side. And that's a powerful shift. The clock is ticking. Here's where things get really interesting. Kash Patel is a former federal prosecutor. He knows the system. He knows how to play the legal game and how to survive the media war that follows it. AOC and Crockett. They're used to controlling the narrative through social media, sound bites, and viral videos. But this time, the narrative isn't theirs. The internet is leading the conversation. And so far, it's not in their favor. The longer they wait to respond, the more ground they lose. But any misstep could spark another round of viral backlash. It's a tightrope, and the entire country is watching. A bigger truth. Why this? Moment hit home. This isn't just about a spicy TV moment. This is about something deeper, something millions of Americans are feeling, that the truth doesn't belong to any one party, that justice shouldn't be selective, and that power, no matter who holds it, must be held accountable. Kash Patel struck a nerve because he didn't just call out names. He called out a mindset, one where political convenience trumps principle, and where silence is strategic when the target is your opponent. Whether you love or hate Patel, you have to admit, he exposed a contradiction. AOC and Crockett have built careers on calling out systemic injustice. But when the system turns in their favor, when it targets their political enemies, the outrage disappears. That's what millions saw in that moment. Not just drama, not just conflict, but clarity. Final thoughts. Why this moment isn't going away whether or not Patel testifies, whether or not AOC responds, whether or not Crockett releases a video. The message has already landed, that the truth doesn't care about party lines, talking points, or who has the louder microphone. It just needs someone brave enough to say it out loud, and a public willing to listen. And that's what made this moment explode. Not just because it was bold, not just because it was live, but because for once, it felt honest. And in politics, that might be the rarest thing of all. Like, comment and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Hit the bell, so you never miss a moment like this one. Whose side are you on? Team Patel or Team Panic?